Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Just a really quick intro today, because if you have followed on from how to do the little boy blue baby blanket, the body of the blanket, you'll have followed through because now you are ready to do the border. So my border was done using a 4mm hook and cream Scheepjes Colour Crafter yarn. Obviously this is the worst kind of colour to try and show in a tutorial, so just like I did for the body of the blanket, I'm going to use a thicker yarn and a larger hook so you can see what I am doing. So get your little boy blue bodies ready. That sounds so weird and wrong. I really should script my videos instead. Anyway, let's crack on with the border. So this is my tiny little sample. When you're done and you've finished your very final stitch, I like to chain one, find my scissors, where have they gone? Oh, there they are. Snip my yarn, and remember to leave yourself a generous amount of yarn that you can use to weave in. And then I just pull it through, pull it tight, so I've just secured it with a chain one. Then obviously you would go ahead and weave in all your ends. However, I'm not going to do that for the sake of this tutorial because I want to crack on and show you how I did the border. So with the right side of the work facing you, now it's up to you which you decide is the right or wrong side of the work. Personally, for me, because I started on a 4 and I'm ending on a 4, that makes this the right side of the work. But you've been turning, it doesn't matter which side you deem the sort of front. So I'm going to go all the way back over here to my very first double crochet, not my chain 2, but my double crochet in this corner here. So that's where I finished off. I'm just going to pop my hook under that stitch, bring in this different coloured yarn. I'm going to pop a slip knot onto my hook, put it up tight, and I'm going to bring this through to the front of my work. Now don't worry if that knot comes through as well, because when you weave in your ends, you're going to be covering that up. Now you're going to chain one, which does not count as a stitch, it's just to sort of secure that yarn in there. And you're going to put 3 single crochet all into this same stitch, which will be your very first corner made. Now what I like to do with my 3 single crochet is find that middle one and pop a stitch marker in it in that second single crochet, just so when I come back around again, I can see clearly that's the corner. Then you're going to put a single crochet into every single stitch and your chain 1 space. Don't forget that, that needs a single crochet too, all the way along. And then in my very last stitch over here, I'm also going to put 3 single crochet to form my next corner. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm crocheting over this tail as well at the same time for a few stitches. I'm just putting a single crochet into every stitch as I go and into that chain 1 space. All right, so I'm in this last stitch now, and I'm just going to pop 3 single crochet. Get that tail out of the way to form my second corner, which again, pop a little stitch marker in. My stitch marker is going to start banging around on the table. Pop it into the second of those 3 single crochets that you just did. So you've got a single crochet and your beginning corners. Now you're going to turn your work, and on each row as you go down, you're going to put 2 single crochets around the stitches. So this one immediately below, you can see it's sort of the stitch that we went into the top of. I'm going to, let me sandwich that so that's out, not flopping around. I'm going to put 2 single crochets just right around the entire post of that stitch. So that's all within the very first row there. So that's that 4th double crochet that I have just crocheted around. Now for your rows of 2, I like to go in between that double crochet and the turning chain, the chain 2. It is up to you where you want to put it. That just sort of falls naturally in line for mine. So that's where I'm going to pop my next 2 single crochets. It is completely up to you where you put them. It's just a case of making sure you've got 2 in each row. So again, for my sets of 4, I just go around that outside double crochet, and for my sets of 2, I go in between the stitch and the chain 2 space. On your very last sort of row, pop 2 single crochet around that double crochet. And then, because we're now approaching the bottom edge with the chains, it all gets a little bit tighter, so have a bit of patience. But in the top, right by that slip knot, around that stitch where you've just put your 2 double crochets, into there, to the bottom of that stitch, you are going to put 3 single crochet, just like we did at the top, to form the corner. So you can see my slip knot here, that's my first sort of, or my last chain, depending how you think about it. I'm going to be putting it in there, so it's sort of that very first chain. But as I say, things get a little bit tighter down here. I'm putting 3, and I'm going to mark that second one. Oh, I'm running out of stitch markers. I've got a giant whale. Right, so pop that in the second one. You don't have to do this, it just helps you visually see where your corners are. And then just like the top, single crochet into every chain, including the one that you skipped. So I'm just going around that chain. Okay, so I'm on my last 4 chains here. So those are my first 3 double crocheted, and that was the 4 chains that we skipped right on the very first row. So I'm going to put my 3 single crochet into the bottom of this chain right here. So that's my 3 for the corner, and then turn your work, and just like before, you're going to put 2 single crochet all the way up the side. So I'm going to start with the 2 around that chain space, or chain, turning chain, 2 around the 2. And now, because it's the other side, for my 4, this is where I've now got my chain 2 space, so I'm going to pop it in there. As long as you do it evenly, that's all that matters. And then on this very last one, don't forget, you've got to pop 2 single crochet. And then join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet you did. Ignore the chain 1, straight in there. Now hopefully yours is much neater than mine. But that's your first round of just single crochet forming the base. Now we can move on to the second round. So for the second round, we are going to be doing a round of half double crochet stitches. Now you've got your corner point marked, be it with a really noisy stitch marker, which I apologise for, or a scrap of yarn, or just your eyeballs. We're not there yet. We've slip stitched to the stitch beforehand. So you're going to chain 1 and put a half double crochet straight into that same stitch. Then you're immediately at the corner. Now for your corners, you are going to, let me get rid of this little happy whale. You are going to put 2 half double crochets. That's 1, that's 2. You're going to chain 2 and put 2 half double crochets all into that same place, same single stitch, which starts to give you more of a square corner. So for this entire row, round, however you want to describe it, you are going to put a half double crochet in every single stitch around, and in the corners you are going to put 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets. So feel free to pause this video, but I'm going to whiz around. I'm going to pause the video here so that I can carry on and you don't have to watch me doing plain boring half double crochets all the way around, and I will meet you back over here ready for the 3rd round. Okay, so I'm finishing up my last half double crochet of that round, and I'm going to slip stitch to the top of that half double crochet, not the chain 1, straight into the top there. So you should have, let me move all these noisy stitch markers out of the way. You should have something that looks a lot like this. So half double crochets all the way around, and in the corners 2 half double crochet, chain 2, 2 half double crochet in there. Okay, so for the 3rd round, I did a round of camel stitch. Now, hopefully this will show up on camera. I am using quite a sort of dark blue yarn here. If you know how to do the camel stitch already, wonderful, you are good to go. If you don't, I will try and show you in this video, but I do have a video on how to do camel stitch, and I will pop up a little annotation here, so a card may have popped up, or if not, there is a link in the description box below on how to do the camel stitch. But as I say, I will try and show you, but it's not always the clearest when it's sort of a blue yarn like this. Now for this round, just like before, chain 1 and put a half double crochet into that same stitch. Now the camel stitch, let's cross my fingers, you can see this. When you look at your stitches from above, you can see you have this little V here. Now if you rotate it back slightly, you'll also see there is another little loop here. So when you're looking at your work, you've got your V's on top, turn around, and you've got this other loop here. V's, 3rd loop here. This is the one that you are going to be working into. Now, like I say, it's quite tricky to see, so by all means pause this video and go ahead and watch the camel stitch tutorial that I have linked to. But you're going to do all your half double crochets on the sides and on the long sections into this 3rd loop here. And what that does is it pushes top V of your stitch forward, which gives, if I bring in the original blanket, you can see it pushes it forwards, which gives it almost like a knit type look. So you're going to do that in the next stitch again, picking up that 3rd loop. After a while, you get so used to finding that 3rd loop, it will become second nature. Now, when you reach your chain 2 space, so you've run out of half double crochets to crochet into, in your chain 2 spaces, you are going to put, just like before, 2 half double crochet, chain 2, 2 half double crochet, just straight into that chain 2 space to form your corner. So just into the space. Then you're going to immediately pick up and start going into that third loop. So on the corners, you're not doing camel stitch because you're working into the chain 2 space, and on every other stitch around you're going to be working into that third loop. Now for my blanket, obviously you can continue for as many rows as you like. I did it so that I had, so this is my first camel stitch row, there's another one there. I wanted 3 V's sticking forward. So on here you can see it's my single crochet. Actually, easier if I show you at the top. That's a single crochet row. Here, I know it's difficult to pick out in cream. It's my half double row. And this here is the first camel stitch. So the camel stitch is pushing down those loops. Very final row. I will show you that. I did a single crochet just to sort of bring the height down a little bit. But you are free to do this camel stitch for as wide as you want it. It's a nice stretchy stitch. You will need to block it lightly. I haven't actually blocked this one yet, but you will need to block it lightly because as you go, your corners are going to start pulling up and peaking a little bit, and these are going to be sitting down and relaxing. But once you have blocked your blanket, it will all sit neatly in line with itself. So you go ahead and do as many camel stitch rows as you like. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple, and then I will show you how I finished off with the single crochet, just to neaten it up. Okay, so I am just about to finish up my last camel stitch on this row, and I just wanted to show you how I have been finishing off. Now it's completely up to you how you want to finish off, but I just slip stitch straight to the top of that very first half double crochet that you did. Now in the grand scheme of blanket, you will not notice if this one does or does not go into the back loop, but you can see how, get my tail out of the way, see how it's dipping down already because it was quite a relaxed sort of stitch, which is why I say if you give it a quick block, it'll all fall nice and neatly in line. So this is my very first row of camel stitch. So the next one you do will push that over, and if you do another one again, it pushes that over. So you just keep going. So you have, oops, hope it was in shot, it pushed over. So that's where we're currently at this stage here. So the next row camel stitch pushes this one down, and then you have it there. So I'm going to do another row, and I'll meet you back here in a second so you can see how it's starting to look. All right, so that's the end of my next sort of camel stitch round that I've done. Now for my blanket, I only really wanted the 3, keep not pulling this in shot, I only really wanted 3 ridges because it's quite a delicate blanket and I didn't want a huge border on it. You can obviously do as many of these camel stitch rows as you like. Now, one thing you may find is because it sort of pulls itself down, your corners will start to get a bit more pronounced and pointy. Now you can block, or if you are going to carry on and do like a much wider sort of border, instead of doing half double crochets for your corners, do single crochets, because that shall keep the height of the corners down. So obviously as this is pulling down, your corners are growing up. So if it is getting too pronounced for you, replace the half double crochets and put single crochets instead, which will bring the height of any subsequent rows down. So it should sort of level itself back out again. For just a few rows, you really won't notice, but it's just a heads up if you were going to continue and put on a really big, wide, cool, chunky border. It's just something to keep a bit of an eye on. Now, for the very last row, I wanted my 3 sort of camel stitch rib top stitch bits to show. So I did something slightly different for my final round on my blanket here. And I'm going to just show you quickly what I did. Now, I did a round of single crochet, but still going into that third loop on the half double crochet below. So I'm just going to pop a single crochet in here. And so I was doing my single crochets in to that third loop, which pushes that half double crochet down, but doesn't give me like a huge, great big wide stitch on top. So because I just wanted a thin sort of border above the ribbing section, see how closely that sits? That way it's sort of pronounced the sort of upwards facing stitches without having a wide section. So you can see it's just sort of gently sitting on top. And then in the corners, I did 1 single crochet, chain 2, 1 single crochet. So that's how I did my very final edge on the little boy blue blanket, with single crochet into the third loop rather than half double crochet. Like so. And that's it. That is how I did the border on the little boy blue baby blanket. As I say, you are free to keep growing the camel stitch border. Just be a little bit aware of your corners if you are going to go too much wider. As you can see, they're starting to disappear off over there. So by switching out to single crochet instead of half doubles, that should eliminate any more further pointing that you may be having. But a simple little block is going to sort this right out for me on mine, so it's not a problem for me. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to shout. Everything is in the description box below. And I hope you enjoy making your camel stitch borders, and I will see you again on my channel very soon. Bye for now.